Welcome back to another Mock Draft Monday. I know one of my recent uploads was a mock draft. I typically don't like to do too many, like pretty much back to back. But if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I got pretty bad news about my cat on that Friday, so I took the weekend off. And I typically don't mention any type of personal news on the channel at all, but because the cat has made so many appearances in videos and even out of frame with the chirps and little meows in the back, I figured it was worth mentioning that I was going to be taking a little bit of time off. But we're back, and we're going to get a pretty interesting mock draft. I've made some unique picks, to say the least, and let's jump in. Kicking things off, we're going to go Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders at number 1. Just seems like the most obvious selection at this point. Maybe something changes, but it seems doubtful at this point as we move to the Jets at number 2. I still think Arvell Reese has a pretty decent chance to be the number 2 overall pick in the draft. I know the Jets taking, an Ohio State player in the front 7 has historically not gone well at all. I actually thought of a second iteration or instance of that over the last couple of decades between Vernon Golston and now Darren Lee. That was a bad pick at the time, and now he's been arrested for murder. So that usually isn't good. It's always bad. Cardinals at 3. This is where things get a little bit interesting for me. I said I was going to be a little bit unique today, and this is going to be that. I'm going to go Jeremiyah Love at 3. It is early because he plays running back. Like that's the reason why it's early, not because of lack of talent as a player. Jeremiyah Love is, I think, comfortably a top 3 player in this draft. You look at the 3 or 4 best, and you're talking about Jeremiyah Love, Arvell Reese potentially in that conversation, right? Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs. And then, Mendoza, if you're factoring the quarterback. Ruben Bain maybe in that conversation too. But I think it's the 3 Ohio State guys on defense and Jeremiyah Love. And then Mendoza. Those are the top 5 best players in this draft. Obviously, Mendoza gets the boost because he plays quarterback. But Jeremiyah Love, we think of less because he plays running back. It's one of the more replaceable positions, but there just isn't a comparable prospect, not only in this draft, but that we've seen for a little while now. I was seeing on Twitter that Marcus Whitman, that franchise guy, was looking for a comparison and basically comped him to a more athletic ETN, or, I don't know if I see that fully, but, I think back to a Darren McFadden, and the only problem with Darren McFadden is he just couldn't stay healthy, but was absolutely electric at Arkansas. I mean, Jeremiyah Love checks off so many boxes that you look for in a running back, has good contact balance, but of course is known for his absolutely elite speed and playmaking ability. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got good vision. He's a tremendous running back prospect. And when you look at the other running backs on the board, there just isn't anyone who's even remotely in the same tier of prospect. Love is absolutely phenomenal. With James Conner's injury history and his age, Trey Benson's injury history, and the Cardinals seemingly not loving him that much. Obviously, a new head coach in there now, maybe something changes, but you could come in and look to land a splash player at number 3 that you're not going to be able to find later in the draft. Now, this offensive tackle class isn't amazing, and maybe you think that 3 is a little bit too early to take a tackle, and you still have a very, very high pick at the top of the second round. You may be able to take a tackle that's fallen a little bit to jump in and play right tackle without having to spend a top 3 pick on one. Now, this is traditionally not the way we value these 2 positions. Typically, the tackle is going to go higher than the running back because it's one of those more valuable, harder to replace positions. But maybe you go Love at 3 and then Maxey and Achor, keep him in state with your second round pick, and all of a sudden you're cooking. You didn't have to spend, what I would consider to be kind of a reach pick on an offensive tackle when they're not incredible. Now, I like Francis Mauigoa a lot. I like Spencer Fano, right? Those are probably the 2 in the conversation to go in the top 10. Maybe just based on athletic potential, Monroe Freeling and Caden Proctor could be in that conversation, but it's really Fano and Mauigoa. And if you're not in love with them as prospects, Mauigoa, maybe he's going to play guard, maybe he's going to be able to stick a tackle. It's hard to say, depending on the team that takes him. Obviously, we'll have more information. And then Fano is like a fringe top 10 type of player. Maybe you just take the best player available, which happens to be a running back. I think it's a little bit different than Ashton Genty going ahead of Armand Membu. I think Membu was a better prospect, whereas Love, I think, is clearly above the tackles if you were going to put out a big board. So, again, maybe you just go with the best player available, and that's Jeremiyah Love here at 3. So it's early for a running back, but he is a great, great prospect, and running back is becoming more and more valuable. And we see these guys get drafted higher and higher and higher every year after, quite a long run of, is there even going to be a running back drafted in the first round? Well, Jeremiyah Love is still currently being mocked in the top 10, which is earlier than it was for Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs, who obviously ended up going outside of the top 10, and Genty, around this time. So I don't think there is a 0% chance that Love could end up going top 5 in the draft. And 3 seems really high. It would be the highest drafted running back since Saquon at number 2 in 2018, but maybe not impossible. And this is not something I do very often, but we're going to play around with that today and see how the board changes as a result. At number 4, Tennessee Titans on the clock. I also think they could consider Jeremiyah Love if he were to get to them, and I think it's likely that he does, but not impossible that he's off the board. We're going to go Ruben Bain. There's an argument to be made for him as a top 5 player in the class as well, and that's only elevated by the premium position that he plays, which is, of course, edge rusher. There are some that think he can move to the inside. But at the end of the day, which is a common expression for me nowadays, I think that Bain can hang on the edge. He's extremely powerful. He's a great run defender, and I think there's a ton of value to what he brings to the table, which is being able to pressure the quarterback, even if the sack production's not exactly elite. He's shown the ability, if you actually watch the film, to take over a game. And we saw that in the college football playoff. And at a lot of times over the course of the 2025 season, he's a tremendous player and worthy of a top 5 selection in this year's draft. As we get to the Giants at number 5, I'm going to go Caleb Downs for reasons that we've talked about before. He's also a top 5 player in the draft, and maybe the Giants just go best player available. And you can make a really good argument for Sonny Styles in this position as well. But I think, John Harbaugh coming in from Baltimore, you see what Kyle Hamilton was able to do for that defense. And Caleb Downs has a similar skill set, in my opinion, to Kyle Hamilton. I actually prefer Downs as a prospect. I wasn't a huge Kyle Hamilton fan. There were a lot of people that had him as the number 1 player in that draft, and I just didn't quite see that. Did still have a first-round grade on him, but I thought he was fairly limited in his skill set, whereas we've seen in the NFL, he's in the perfect role, or was at least in Baltimore, and that shouldn't really change too much, I would think, under Jesse Minter. Kyle Hamilton has not been this freak, single high free safety, move them all around the field. He's really playing, the apex defender role, and he's so good in the slot. And we've seen Nick Eamon-Worry thrive in a very similar role in that Mike McDonald defense in Seattle. And I think Caleb Downs could do something similar. We also don't have a great idea about the versatility of Caleb Downs just because he hasn't really been asked to do it very much at Ohio State. We look at this past season. You have the former Patriots defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, as their defensive coordinator. And he was just trying to win games, right? So it wasn't, hey, put on a showcase, move Caleb Downs all around the field. It was put him around the football where he can trigger downhill, shut down screens, shut down plays to the flat, shut down the middle of the field at times. I mean, he's great, but he's great near the ball. We have seen some reps of him playing single high and, of course, more in the 2-half. But he's especially good around the football. So I think you can see a little bit of Kyle Hamilton to Caleb Downs, and John Harbaugh could see Caleb Downs as a culture setter and a great start to the Giants' John Harbaugh era. So I could see Downs just checking off a ton of boxes for that reason. As we move to the Browns at number 6, I'm going to go Spencer Fano. Very close between the top couple of offensive tackles, but could see Fano being the first off the board. He profiles a little bit more as just a true right tackle, whereas, again, some are going to have Francis Mauigoa as a guard, even though I personally think he can stick at tackle. I think he's good enough out there. But Fano, man, good player, good in pass pro. There's absolutely a value to that the Browns would see here at number 6 overall. I know a lot of my mock drafts for the Browns pretty much look the same. It's, take the top tackle at 6 or the top receiver at 6, and then flip it at 24. Take the best tackle or best receiver available. And I just think it's what they're going to do. I think they come out of this draft with a receiver and a tackle in the first round. Now, could that change? Yeah, they have a lot of needs. They really do. And could this be a surprise Ty Simpson team at 24? Not impossible, although not my favorite pick. A lot of people like Ty Simpson and think he could go in the first round, and that's what these mock drafts are. It's trying to project, who's going to do what and who's going to go where. And I think Ty Simpson's going to start being a first-round pick fairly regularly for me because he's one of the top quarterbacks available, number 2, right? And a lot of guys have him as a fringe first-round talent. I don't necessarily view him in the same way just because the fall off from the first half of the season to the second was so drastic. But he plays the most valuable position, and those guys get moved up the board. So maybe we'll revisit that at 24. Commanders at 7. I am going to go with Sonny Styles. There is an argument to be made that he is the best player in the draft, but again, plays a lesser valued position of off-ball linebacker. But as I've been saying, he's as close to the perfect linebacker prospect as you're going to find. He's got absolutely elite size and athleticism. He's 6'5", 240 pounds, maybe a little bit less than this overall, maybe like closer to 6'4", 235, but plays pretty big, plays strong, has every ability to take on an offensive lineman as he, fits the run. He's able to stack and shed blocks, and he doesn't really miss tackles. I say doesn't really because he has one. He had a Mark Fletcher missed tackle in the college football playoff, but again, that was after throwing an offensive lineman aside and putting himself in a great position to make the play. He just didn't wrap up on that particular occasion, and that is quite literally the only rep you will find where he doesn't finish the tackle, at least from what I saw and the numbers. There might be something out there that I've missed or that others have missed, but he does not miss tackles, and he has a good feel for coverage. It's not absolutely incredible. He's not like the best coverage linebacker I've ever seen, but given all the other skills, he's very, very good in that regard as well. And the Commanders with the aging Bobby Wagner, this is kind of a no-brainer selection because you get to go best player available, and it's a position of need. David Bailey may be in this conversation as well, but I also think he could be in the conversation at 8, and we're going to have the Saints take him. They need to improve this defensive line, and David Bailey is a proven pass rusher. I think there are some concerns with him, but he just wins as a pass rusher. So you can point to the thinner lower half, his inability really to stop the run, at least at the level that a lot of these other guys in this class do. And it's not a super fair comparison because there are some elite run defenders off the edge in this class, like Ruben Bain, like Keldrick Falk. But Bailey is arguably the best true pass rusher of all of them. I still think he needs to work on his plan a little bit more and kind of develop some counters for if the speed rush doesn't work at first in the NFL. You do need some counter moves that you're going to be able to go to win after your first attempt. That's the mark of a good player. It's not just the high motor. It's the plan and the ability to put different moves together to win off the edge. And David Bailey, I don't think has fully shown that yet. There are instances, of course, but I think he could be a little bit more diverse if the first move, speed rush, doesn't work. As we get to the Chiefs at number 9. A lot of people really love Bailey, by the way. There's a conversation he could end up being the pick at number 2. So it's good value at 8 here. Chiefs at number 9. Going to go Carnell Tate. It's wide receiver 1 off the board. I still feel like it's going to end up being Carnell Tate because he has the best combination of size, speed, route running ability, and health. And you can kind of ding Mekhi Lemon a little bit because he's not the same athlete. Does not have the same size. Now, if you listen to James Foster of No Flags Film, a friend of the channel, we've had him on. Lemon was more of an athlete in 2024, and I agree with that. He was more explosive and had better long speed. Didn't really show up as much in 2025. I don't know that you can count on that, showing up down the line. But I love Lemon's ability in every other facet. I do think he has great change of direction ability. I think he is incredibly tough with incredibly strong hands. But I think size and athletic profile in general will limit where he ends up going in the draft. And for Jordan Tyson, it's a lot about health. But Tate, doesn't really have any of those concerns. He's a good route runner. He is absolutely a ball winner. Throw it up to him. The 50-50 ball is maybe even a little bit better than that. He is great at coming down with contested catches, in my opinion. And if you look at the Chiefs receiving core, it's not especially strong for the future. And you needed to find Mahomes more weapons, and they just didn't really exist. I like Xavier Worthy. I don't hook him, of course. I don't know that he is a wide receiver one in the NFL. Right? I think he's a great deep threat field stretcher and someone that you can scheme touches to, and he can, kill you with his speed with the ball in his hands. I think he's, Z, whereas Carnell Tate can be your true X outside receiver that can, beat press and that can separate, but also win a jump ball if you don't get quite the separation that you want. He can go up and get it against anybody. And I don't know that I truly believe in Rashee Rice. Why is that? He's very talented. He's great with the ball. He's got a lot of off-the-field stuff. A lot of it. So I just don't know that you can count on a player like that. So we're at least getting a backup option in what I think will be a starter on the outside for Kansas City. With Jeremiyah Love off the board, do you want to take an edge rusher? A lot of them are gone. Do you want to take Kenyon Sadiq here to replace Travis Kelce long-term? Maybe it's a bit too early. So you get to just get wide receiver one as we get to the Bengals at 10. Now, this was a tough selection for me because, I'm really defense here for Cincinnati all the time. And I agree that their defense is atrocious and needs a lot of help. But I just don't know that the right player is available here. Do you want to take the first interior defensive lineman off the board? It feels a bit early. It does. Caleb Downs is not here in this scenario. You have some decent corners. You could absolutely take the first one off the board here. I think that's in play. I think the fact that Sonny Styles didn't make it here means linebackers probably out of the question. And the best edge rushers really didn't make it here. Now, you could go with the speed rush of Howell or the great size and run defending ability of Keldrick Falk. And this is the type historically that the Bengals gravitate toward. Bigger framed guys that are very good against the run, and the pass rush is a little bit more of a question. But I think as bad as your defense is, and as bad as that has hurt you in trying to win games, what has hurt the Bengals more than anything is the inability to keep Joe Burrow healthy. So the best way to combat that is to go out and get protection. And is 10 a little bit early for a guard? Maybe so, but we are going to go Francis Maui-Noah because he can come in and start at guard. If there's an injury, he has experience enough at tackle to where he can hold his own. You probably wouldn't have him playing right tackle because of Amarius Mims, but if there's an injury, Maui-Noah could be your swing tackle to start at right tackle for Mims or left tackle for Orlando Brown Jr. if he were to be hurt and there's some history there. But he'd be a starter at guard, and you can just go out and play your best five. They signed Dalton Risner off the street. I think Cordell Volson plays a little bit, but, this has not been the best unit in the NFL, and Joe Burrow has been someone that is kind of getting this injury-prone tag. Could Francis Maui-Noah just be the best combination of team need and best player available? I think there's a conversation to be had there. And yes, I know their defense needs so much help, but protecting Joe Burrow, I think, is the most important thing. And I just didn't know that there was a player that lined up well enough here given the way the board fell. Yeah, it could absolutely be a corner or an edge rusher. I mean, Falk is the one that makes probably the most sense here, but I'm going to go Francis Maui-Noah today. And I know defense, I get it, but just didn't see the best fit today as we get to the Dolphins at 11. Tyreek Hill has been cut. Bradley Chubb has been cut as I record this. So could wide receiver be in play? Well, I've already had wide receivers going to the Dolphins at 11. I think it was already in play, kind of predicting that this Tyreek Hill move would happen. I think I've said I didn't know if he would ever play another snap for the Dolphins or even maybe even the NFL. And that is at least the case, it seems, with the Dolphins. Bradley Chubb was an expected cap casualty. Edge is, of course, still in play. You traded away Jalen Phillips. But I think with the top two corners being available, and that being such a tremendous need, I think you just take the top corner available. And that happens to be Mansour Delane. I'm going to end up with a higher grade on Jermod McCoy. I just will. Because his 2024 is elite. It is something of a top 5 player in the class, like we talked about. We didn't see him in 2025 due to an injury. That's tough. I would like to know what he looks like in 2025. We might see him at the Combine. That could illuminate some things. It will absolutely be in play with injury stuff because the medicals are arguably the most important part of the Combine. They probably are. That can affect your draft stock more than anything. And Jermod McCoy, because he's coming off, a knee injury, torn ACL, we don't know what he's going to look like. We don't know how ready he's going to be for 2026. And if he's back, is he going to be the same type of player that he was in 2024? I don't know, right? So does that get a guy like Mansour Delane drafted ahead of you? I kind of think it does. There's no way to know for sure, obviously. But Delane had such a great 2025. What does he have that Jermod McCoy doesn't? Well, he's got the fact that he played in 2025 and was the best draft eligible corner in football, I think for sure. He was absolutely spectacular. He doesn't have elite size. The arm length is not great, and that matters a lot at corner, especially if you're going to play any type of press man scheme. I don't know that he has that ability. I do think he can mirror and match, but I don't know that he's got the shutdown ability at the line of scrimmage where he can completely throw a receiver off the route, and that could potentially pose a problem for a number of defensive coordinators who rely heavily on press man to be effective. It's something. But Jermod McCoy, better athlete, better size. Delane, better proximity. I mean, we saw him in 2025, and he was great. And I think teams might just prefer that because they've seen what Mansour Delane can do more recently. In the case of Delane, it's just versus McCoy. I think it's just preference, really. If you feel good about the injury and the health, I would say, of Jermod McCoy, you might take him just because 2024 was better than Delane's 2025. But, I mean, that's going to be, 2 years ago by the time we see him on the field again, pretty much, or a year and a half. As we get to the Cowboys at 12, they don't really seem to care about perceived big board value. They're taking the best player for them. And that could be Keldrick Falk here at 12. Again, I have some questions about his pass rush upside. We just haven't seen enough of it. But the run defending ability is phenomenal. And you look at their defensive line, if you're going to rock Donovan Ezeraku, who is a lighter edge, who is not as good against the run, I think on that other side, that strong side edge is going to need to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more stout, a little bit more ability to set the edge and defend the run. So you're a little bit more balanced on the defensive line. Falk could just end up being a great selection here for Dallas with how they want to, build their defense. Linebacker still a need, corner still a need, of course. Could opt for something on the other side of the ball, like tackle maybe, or receiver in the case that George Pickens ends up leaving, although I don't think that ends up happening. It's a possibility. Falk is someone that makes sense here. And I think McCoy as well, but maybe you're scared away from the injury stuff. So they go with the edge rusher. And that opens up the Rams to take Jermod McCoy. I think, again, he's a tremendous player. The injury stuff, as we just talked about, is a little bit concerning, but the 2024 tape was incredible. And that's something that I think will have him drafted in the first round. Is this a little bit too early? Again, we're going to know more as we hear about the Combine medicals. There will be reports most likely about his health status. And obviously there's smoke screens all the time. Can't read or believe everything you hear or read, but those are typically, somewhat reliable. Oh, McCoy didn't pass, whatever. But some of the stuff we just don't end up hearing about. A lot of this draft stuff just ends up being speculation. As we get to the Ravens at number 14, I still really like the Vega Ioane selection here. I just think he's a plug-and-play starter. Throw him at right guard over Daniel Fa'alele. I think could also be an upgrade at left guard over Andrew Voorhees. We've obviously seen him there. It's just that, again, for the Ravens, this is the best player for them, I think, at this spot. You could go with the best interior defensive lineman available, whether that's Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Lee Hunter, Cade McDonald. You could go with a receiver. Lemon is still here. Jordan Tyson's still here. I think Ioane is going to end up going in the first half of the first round. He's just so polished, so good size, very good athleticism. He's an awesome player. I think he's a plug-and-play starter. The size is incredible at 6'4", 330. He's experienced, and he was the best guard in college football this past season and is the best true guard in this draft, I think, comfortably. There are some tackles, and that's why you could say, hey, why take Maui Noa to play guard when Vega Ioane exists to play guard? Especially, considering what I've just said about them. But I think the swing tackle thing is what pushes Maui Noa over the top. And maybe Maui Noa ends up being a better guard than Ioane. So, I mean, again, a lot of speculation, a lot of maybe, could be, we'll see. But that's kind of the way this is. As we get to the Bucs at number 15, I think I did this last week, but I still like Kenyon Sadiq here. He's such a good athlete. He's so tough for linebackers to cover in space. He's a great ball winner at the catch point. He's strong. He is consistently coming down with these jump balls. He's an awesome player. Cade Otton's a free agent. Again, maybe the board just doesn't work out so well with the top couple of corners now off the board, with Sonny Styles off the board. Do you want to take C.J. Allen here? Is it maybe a bit too early? Do you like the edge rushers enough? Because Cassius Howell's still here if you like the undersized speed rusher, which historically the Bucs do. It's an option, but also more weapons for Baker Mayfield, probably not the worst idea. As we get to the Jets at 16, going to stop the Mekhi Lemon fall, if you will, but I don't think it's really too much of a fall. You factor in, again, the size and athleticism, it is below average. But I think the actual things you really need to play wide receiver, Lemon is elite in those. He's got a great feel for getting open and catching the ball. Those things are quite valuable to me. So is he going to run by you? Not from what he showed in 2025. Is he absolutely explosive at the top of his routes? Not maybe incredibly so, but he's just such a smooth mover that can operate in the blind spots of defensive backs. He consistently gets open that way, especially down the field. But even if he doesn't have the separation, he has the ability to go up and get it with the ball in the air. Doesn't really drop the ball. These are things I care about a lot. And I think for the Jets specifically, that's what they're looking for. You have Garrett Wilson. You have a developing Adonai Mitchell. Lemon can play Z and the slot and potentially dominate and open up this offense in ways that guys like John Mechie unfortunately could not do last year. As we get to the Lions at 17, going to go Avion Terrell. And you look at the Lions, it's just their defensive back depth is just not great. And because I think Terrell can play on the outside or in the nickel, I think he's going to be tremendously valuable to a team like this because he's got the versatility and he's absolutely got the ability. I think if you like Brian Branch, you're going to like Avion Terrell. Now, to counter that, Brian Branch went at 45 or so, where Avion Terrell's going at 17. But Terrell can also play on the outside, and I think that's what separates him from Brian Branch as a prospect. Now, I was insanely high on Brian Branch. Who knows how much we're going to see of him in 2026? Tore his Achilles. Kirby Joseph is often injured. Their cornerbacks are often injured. You need more defensive backs in the mix, especially guys that are as good as Avion Terrell happens to be. At number 18, going to go Minnesota Vikings. Cornerback Colton Hood out of Tennessee. Played great with Jermod McCoy being injured. He absolutely stepped up, was just awesome in 2025. And for the Vikings, much like the Lions of the NFC North, you need more depth and talent at defensive back. Now, seems a little bit early for safety. I do quite like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren and Dylan Thieneman, and those are options. You look at the Vikings' top couple of safeties, it is pretty old at this point. Harrison Smith, kind of insanely old Harrison Smith. Josh Metellus has always been at his best when he's moving around and being versatile. you could just try to grab a safety here to start at number 18. But corner is also not in the best shape. So grabbing a corner that can start immediately on the outside like Colton Hood, I think is not the worst idea. Panthers at 19. Gonna go Cassius Howell. His ability to get to the quarterback, he's a great speed rusher. And you look at the Panthers, I think they're pretty strong in the interior of that defensive line. You paid big money to Tershawn Wharton, bit of a tongue twister there. Derek Brown is obviously one of the better ones in the league. And that's still not all. You have Ashawn Robinson. You have Bobby Brown. These are players that have been good for the Panthers. But what they're missing desperately is linebacker and kind of more of that speed rush guy. Nick Scourton kind of popped a little bit as a rookie. I'm not sure you're relying heavily on DJ Wanham. Princely Uman-Mielen's kind of more of a we'll see at this point, is quite young. But Howell's got the ability to come in and at least join that rotation right away. And if he's going to be a designated pass rusher, yeah, this is a little bit early for him. But there's a thought he could be a 3-down player. And for the Panthers that really need to improve their pass rush, it's going to be tough to find somebody that can help you out more than Cassius Howell with this particular pick. And then at number 20, Cowboys back on the board after grabbing Keldrick Falk at number 12. I'm going to go with a linebacker, C.J. Allen. I think he's a really good player. I think he's got decent size, really good athleticism. I'm not super worried about the PFF grades. Obviously, a good run defender. In coverage, he's made some splash plays, but you're looking just, I guess, for a little bit more consistency. But for Dallas here, linebacker's been such a big area of concern, and they take a page out of the Philadelphia Eagles NFC East division rival playbook with a Georgia defender, and that's historically been pretty good over the last decade, I would say, and doesn't always work. Like Lewis Cine was not the best ever. Devontae Wyatt maybe not the best first round pick, but if that's the floor, you can do a lot worse than that. I'm trying to think of other Georgia defenders recently drafted in the first round that really haven't made too much of an impact. And it's hard to think. I mean, like, I guess DeAndre Baker at corner for the Giants wasn't great. He was one of the last picks of the first round. I don't know. Allen, really, really good player. I think can play weak side linebacker for sure, but has the potential to be a Mike in the NFL too. And the Cowboys, again, just need help at linebacker pretty badly. As we get to the Steelers at 21, and if Jordan Tyson's there, to me, it's got to be Jordan Tyson. I think they're going to end up bringing back Aaron Rodgers, but if you don't, maybe Ty Simpson's in play here at 21. It will be in play, maybe even either way. But I'm not a huge Ty Simpson the first round type of guy. Jordan Tyson's really an incredible player that drops because of the injury stuff. And it's not just, okay, he had a hamstring injury all of 2025. It's he tore his ACL before. He's broken his collarbone before. He's had the soft tissue injuries as well, like the hamstring that's kept him out. Like, these are concerning things to me. It isn't just one thing. That's why I'm a little bit higher on a guy like Jermod McCoy. And these are both great players. I love Jordan Tyson. But Jermod McCoy's had the one thing. And guys come back from ACL injuries all the time. For Jordan Tyson, they kind of pile up. And that's a little bit more concerning to me. And I wonder what the medicals are going to find in Indianapolis at the Combine. And I will be streaming the Combine probably on twitch.tv/Bengal, maybe even on YouTube as well. We'll have to see. But, Tyson's a great player. I think if you're going to keep Aaron Rodgers and make a run, Tyson is probably your best bet here in the entire draft to do so. You're just not going to find this type of value at 21 because, the Steelers offense has been okay, but it's really missing that X factor. And maybe you thought they could beat DK Metcalf, maybe you didn't. But either way, they're missing that. And Jordan Tyson could be that X factor. And I feel like if he goes to the Steelers, I might pick him to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Again, health would be a concern, but he's got a clear path to playing time and gets to team up with Aaron Rodgers. And for some reason, I just feel like these two could be on the same page quickly. And Tyson just always has that ability to make the big play when Arizona State has needed him to make the big play. And I feel like Rodgers would quickly develop trust in him and give him those opportunities. And I think that could be a really good fit for the Steelers that seemingly are trying to compete every year, which is understandable. You don't want to go out and lose games. Chargers at 22. Going to go Cade McDonald. Think they could really be looking for a big nose tackle. I get that the interior line's terrible. I just don't know that the right player was here. Chase Basantis, Emmanuel Pregnon. I get that. The centers are not quite good enough here. Connor Lew coming off a big injury. Jake Slaughter is a good player. I actually quite like Logan Jones from Iowa as a day 2 or day 3 pick. Center's not that valuable, it seems, in the way that the NFL views those guys. Billy Schrauth, good player if you're looking for a guard, but a little bit too early, I think, at 22 for any of those names I mentioned. Again, maybe Basantis or Pregnon. So you could just opt to take one of the first interior defensive linemen off the board, if not the first, and that's the big nose tackle from Ohio State, Cade McDonald. I view a lot of these interior defensive linemen pretty closely. McDonald, Woods, Banks, Hunter, and even Kristen Miller in that conversation as well. There are a lot of defensive linemen or interior defensive linemen I like down the board too. Like, I really like Darrell Jackson from Florida State. How could you not like Big Citrus from Iowa State? But Cade McDonald has the size. It's great against the run, and I think this is something the Chargers are really going to value. And it seems like, how can you not help out Justin Herbert? But, trying to improve the defense is never a bad idea either. It's just the right player did not seem to be available. It'd be great if the Chargers and Bengals could swap picks here. That could be decent. But one needs a guard or center even and takes a defensive lineman. The other needs defense and takes an offensive lineman. Sometimes it's just how that goes. Eagles at 23. Going to go Monroe Freeling. Again, we talked about it with the Cowboys, funnily enough, but they're going back to the well, taking a Georgia player here. They've had a lot of success, and you look at the Eagles, they're an injury away from one of the worst looking offensive lines in football at this point. Jordan Mailata is awesome. Lane Johnson has been injured a little bit lately and is not getting any younger. Freeling is really athletic, has very good size. You can develop him, and he might just have to play right away. The interior isn't amazing here for the Eagles, but if Jordan Mailata were to be injured, which you're not hoping for that ever, of course. That would be terrible if it did happen. But if it were to happen, what are the Eagles looking at on their offensive line? If you take out Mailata, which is something that happens in football, players get injured. Lane Johnson is maybe there for another year in 2026. But again, with his health of late and his age, I don't know that you can necessarily count on him, even though he's a Hall of Fame tackle. This O-line could look pretty poor. We know Howie Roseman likes to, beef up the trenches, and he values the valuable positions, like wide receiver, corner, tackle, defensive line. So Freeling here, I think, would be in play based off of the draft history and also the needs for the Philadelphia Eagles. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And you look at this O-line, it looks good right now. Like, Jordan Mailata is awesome. Lane Johnson, when healthy, is awesome. Landon Dickerson, when healthy, is very good. That's been a concern a little bit of late as well. Tyler Steen's not great. Cam Jurgens is far from Jason Kelsey, but is serviceable, I would say. But there's not much behind that. And obviously, you can look to almost any team and say that, right? Because it's tough to get, 2 good tackles, let alone have 3 or even 4 on a roster. But I look at some of these names, and even with Tyler Steen in there, it's not amazing. I know it's a tackle. It's not a Tyler Steen upgrade, but, it's Jordan Mailata or Lane Johnson going down really hurts this team. And we saw how bad the Eagles are without Lane Johnson. So looking to get an upgrade is not the worst idea. Cam Williams still very, very raw as a player. So the Eagles just being a little bit more proactive here than reactive as we get to the Browns at 24. I think I'm going to go Denzel Boston here. I had KC Concepcion, but I'm going to switch this on the fly. It's not too big of a change. It's arguably the top receiver available, somebody that can just go and catch the football. He's got great size. I do worry a little bit about his ability to separate, and that's not an incredible thing to say of a first-round receiver. A lot of people really like Denzel Boston even more than I do. So he's absolutely in play to be the 24th player selected in this draft. And for the Browns, as I've talked about, I think they're going to come away with the best offensive lineman available and the best receiver they can get. And maybe that means taking a receiver at number 6 and then coming back to take the best available offensive lineman. Maybe it's a guard, maybe it's a tackle, what have you, at 24. But in this instance, again, like we talked about, decided to take the first tackle off the board and then come back with Denzel Boston, just a big-bodied receiver that can actually catch the ball. You've had a little bit of a concern there with Jerry Jeudy, and I don't know how high everybody is on Isaiah Bond or Cedric Tillman at this point. So we're going to get another name in the mix, at least, with Washington's Denzel Boston. Bears at 25. Going to go Caleb Banks. I've remained high on Caleb Banks because, again, 2024 was so great. Dealt with injury all through 2025. But when he came back in 2025, was really, really good. You can see the numbers here. It's very limited, right? That's like 100 snaps in 2025 in just a few games. But he was impactful in the games that he did play. Again, no sacks, no quarterback hits, but he showed the power in those hands. He is explosive and disruptive with elite size. 6'6", 330. Obviously, there are some natural leverage and pad level concerns because of that size, but he is really got great potential to be an every down player in the NFL, and that's tough to find, especially on the defensive interior, someone that can be big and stout against the run, but also get after the quarterback. That's what the Bears are looking for, and I think it's a really good fit at 25. Bills at 26. I had it switched with the Browns, and I still like this fit. I'm going Casey Concepcion. He is someone that I think pairs well with the ability of Josh Allen to extend plays and throw the ball down the field. I feel like they don't really have a big-time deep threat, and we saw when even Brandon Cooks at his age was dropped into this Bills offense. He was able to be good and productive and kind of a difference maker for this Bills team. And I think Casey Concepcion could be that type of a player. Now, the hands are not amazing. He's not a great contested catch player. This is someone you do want to scheme the ball to a little bit. I know you have Khalil Shakir for that. And Concepcion shown great ability as a return man as well. But he can get down the field if you can develop him as a receiver a little bit. He's got some of the things you can't teach. He's an explosive playmaker that is still working on the hands a little bit. You might not want to hear that for the Buffalo Bills faithful, the fans, but nobody's perfect. You're not going to find a perfect receiver prospect at 26. You're banking on the upside, and there is a lot of it. Niners at 27. We're going to go Akeem Mesidor here from Miami. He's an older prospect. He's almost the age of the pick number. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, but for the Niners, maybe they're not that concerned about that because you have somebody that can come in and make an impact immediately. I think the Niners are kind of a ready-made Super Bowl contender. I thought an NFC West team would win the Super Bowl this year. It happened to be Seattle. They ended up being, I think, clearly the best team. Rams were close, but I think Seattle was that team. Of course, we saw them win the Super Bowl. That's not a hot take. But the Niners, I don't think are incredibly far off. They had some rough injury luck. They do kind of the Niner thing where they don't have it all the way to the end. They just can't win the big one, right? But they've been close. And they've had so many injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I thought Mykal Williams was a really good first-round pick. He played great up until the point that he got injured. Nick Bosa, often injured. I don't know if you can keep relying on those guys. Mykal Williams, you hope so. But Nick Bosa, I mean, this is a consistent thing of him not being on the field. So to get someone that is a ready-made pass rusher right now at 27, I think is going to be appealing to a lot of the teams drafting in the back end of the first round looking for an upgraded pass rush, especially off the edge. Mesidor is a great pass rusher. It's just old, but could be a good fit here at 27. Receiver, I think, obviously in play. Tackle maybe as well, but Mesidor just kind of lined up. As we get to the Texans at 28, going to go Peter Woods. Again, I think interior offensive line certainly a question. I mean, Caden Proctor is a swing tackle or potential guard. Not an awful option as well, but I think Woods has potential to be a really, really great player. We've seen him be incredibly explosive and disruptive, and it just wasn't quite there in 2025. There were some flash moments, but he didn't he didn't finish a lot of the plays where he was even able to just throw away an offensive lineman. You got to be able to finish. And it was just such an up and down season, mostly down. I still think the potential is great. We saw him be absolutely elite in 2023 and 2024 as a young player. The potential is in there, and the Texans continue to build on a strength, getting more youth and talent into that defensive line. And this is something that is in need of upgrade on the interior. So Peter Woods, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., that's looking pretty fun. Obviously some other players in the interior that are good that we didn't mention, but like Danico Autry is old. Tommy Togiai is all right. They've had some injury problems, but we'll see what happens. I think this is certainly in play as we get to the Rams at 29, and I don't know that the right player is here. Finally upgraded corner at number 13, and the cat is saying, don't do it, but yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Ty Simpson at 29, and this is a weird one because, again, I don't necessarily view him as a first-round player, but this is not an incredible draft. So at 29, there are a wide range of players that I think could get into the first round because I think, the difference between the 20th best player and the 50th is not exactly extreme. And that's actually been the case recently as well. It's kind of a weird phenomenon the last couple of years. I think COVID really threw everything off with guys getting extra eligibility, and we're still feeling it in the 2026 draft. Seems crazy. But Simpson plays the most valuable position. There is a little bit of smoke here about the Rams liking Ty Simpson. I don't know how true that is because, this point was made on Twitter. I think maybe AJ Schulte made it. Can't confirm that for now, but it was a good point of like, didn't the Rams get Jared Goff out to get Matthew Stafford in for the same reasons that like you wouldn't like Ty Simpson, you wouldn't love Jared Goff back then? And I think that's a fair point, but it's like Matthew Stafford's not walking through that door after he retires. The arm talent's still great. You can't just find a Matthew Stafford growing on a tree everywhere. You need someone to play quarterback, and Ty Simpson sitting for a year behind Stafford or two and then having an opportunity to play might be a decent move. He does not have to start right away. He's going to team up with an offensive genius in Sean McVay, and you have 2 first-round picks. You're playing with house money here. You can take a big need and maybe the best player available at 13 and then take a swing on a quarterback at 29. As we get to the Broncos at 30, how about Omar Cooper getting into the first round? Really like him as a player. Thought he was awesome. Thought he was a big weapon for Fernando Mendoza this year. He's got decent size. I think he can play really all around the field. And I think the Broncos really need to upgrade wide receiver. Have not really been able to have a lot of faith in a lot of the guys outside of Courtland Sutton, and he has disappeared from some games. Pat Bryant was getting injured on the first play of every single postseason game. Maybe that's just bad luck. I mean, that type of thing happens, right? Sometimes injuries are freak injuries. Sometimes if you're banged up and trying to play through an injury, you get banged up again. Like, that's the type of thing that goes on. But, between the free agent situations of a number of these wide receivers, the team has not had consistent faith in Marvin Mims, it seems, over his Broncos career. They've had to play little Jordan Humphrey, who awesome, but that's not the best option, maybe. Omar Cooper could be an upgrade. And I think there's a lot of super encouraging things from his tape over the past year at Indiana that say that he could get into the first round. And there are a lot of really talented receivers. Cooper happens to be one of them. And I also think, just based on what Sean Payton likes, I think Chris Brazzell maybe could go here, although it seems a bit early. He's not the typical Tennessee receiver. Like, he can do some things that most 6'5", 200-pound receivers cannot. He's like an upgraded Troy Franklin. Maybe that's in play, but we're going to go Cooper today. As we get to the Patriots at 31, it's honestly probably too far of a fall at this point for Caden Proctor, who is a really good athlete, who does have elite size. If he can actually drop weight, I think he could be even better. He just doesn't. He moves well sometimes, but struggles to redistribute his weight. It's just like the lateral movement could be a little bit better. Once he gets moving in one direction, obviously, he's quite good because he's so big and he's quite fast for his size. It's just the lateral movement is maybe a bit of a question, but he is a good athlete. He does have good potential. Why take him here for the Patriots? Well, he could play tackle potentially. He could play guard. I think the best scenario for the Patriots is to get an upgraded tackle over Will Campbell, move him to guard, and then move Jared Wilson to center. I've heard that Will Campbell is going to be sticking at tackle for the Patriots. I don't hate that. I think some of his problems were he's a rookie. He's being overwhelmed by strength because he's a young player. His timing is off because he's inexperienced against some of these better, stronger pass rushers. I still think Will Campbell could end up being a good tackle. He went up against some really stiff competition and didn't look great. It doesn't mean his career is over, but Proctor has the ability to also potentially play guard. And then Jared Wilson can still move over to center, where I think he's going to be a little bit better. Seattle at 32. I'm getting EMW in the first round. Emmanuel McNeil Warren. You look at Seattle, they've got a lot of expiring contracts in the secondary. Those guys could leave and get paid. They could stick around. It's tough to know for sure. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, I think, is a really good fit for this defense. You know, the Legion of Boom days might be over, but Emmanuel McNeil Warren is a big-time throwback Legion of Boom style defender with size, with speed, with great ability to go and hit, and he's got some good ball skills as well. I'm not going to say he's an upgraded Cam Chancellor, because Chancellor ended up being an awesome NFL player. He wasn't the most athletic. He was kind of like a linebacker playing safety. Emmanuel McNeil Warren is a better athlete, doesn't quite have the same size, but is still a huge safety. And the ball skills are really good. So, I mean, where would he play for Seattle? Not the overhang. I mean, they have a great role carved out for Nicky Manwari, but Kobe Bryant's going to be a free agent. So could he come in and start at safety right away? And when we saw Ty Okada play so much this year, that, I mean, you can really never have enough defensive backs. That's just how it is. So Manwari, potentially Josh Jobe, we don't know for sure. Devin Witherspoon, potentially Tariq Woolen. But again, we don't know about that because I think he's a free agent too. And then Julian Love has been a great player. The Giants really never should have let go, it would appear. And, I mean, you know what? This Seattle defense has too many Giants that they let walk, were traded, that are really good on a Super Bowl winning team, and I'm happy for those guys, but also, like, come on, Giants. I don't know. That's the mock draft. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you, I think, tomorrow for either a Saints franchise episode or going over Dane Brugler's top 100 prospects, which he released. I just didn't feel like making a video at the time, but maybe something tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Appreciate your patience, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.